Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Soccer Morning with you as you head into your weekend. Please don't start your weekend. Well, actually, yeah, you can start your weekend right now. Consider this show, the beginning of this show, the start of your weekend because it's coming. I'm ready for the weekend. I have lots of work to do, but I'm still ready for the weekend. I'm still ready to watch some soccer. We had a League Cup final on Sunday. Who's excited for the League Cup final? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Anybody? Trevor? No? No? Sunderland and Man City, guys. Live from Wembley. League Cup. The League Cup. I don't want to spend any more time debating the position of the League Cup in the hierarchy of English football, in the hierarchy of things to care about. But I will have some trouble getting up for the League Cup. I know. Jozy Altidore can play as an American. I want to see him do well. I don't know. Is he going to start? How does Gus Poyet feel about Jozy Altidore right now? I don't know. Jozy Altidore is in the U.S. men's national team roster for the Ukraine friendly that has been moved to Cyprus on Tuesday. We will talk to Kyle McCarthy to break down that roster from Fox. We'll get him on the show. First up today on the program, guest-wise, our friend Jonathan Tannenwald from Philly.com will join us. I want to talk about the Union, who have had a very strong offseason. Maybe they have been pushed to the side a little bit, not making the same headlines as Toronto has made in the Eastern Conference, not overhauling their team quite as much as DC United has, but they have made some very strong moves. Clearly, Maurice Adu is the big name, but there's plenty happening. Austin Berry is now a member of the Philadelphia Union. What are their prospects this season? So we'll talk to Jonathan Tannenwald about that. We may branch off into one of Jonathan's other areas of expertise, and that is the MLS TV contract negotiations. No news right now, just a sort of, well, we're still working on it. And I know that, Jonathan may not have anything to bring to us because there's no news. But I do want to talk about what this might mean at this point, kind of the continuing negotiations. Is this good or bad? There actually is a potential impact on MLS if Fox is actually serious about this league and getting back into the business of broadcasting Major League Soccer. News is that they are going to put a bunch more Major League Baseball games on Fox Sports 1, which is their flagship sports network. If they do that, how will it impact MLS? Because there's only so much space to go around, only so many time slots available. And we know baseball games don't have a clock and they last forever, and most of you think it's boring, and fine. That's fine. Baseball's not boring, but that's fine. You're allowed to think that. So, Tannenwald and McCarthy on today's program. We'll open up the phone lines later. Certainly, we have expansion things to talk about when it comes to MLS, and expansion always gets the juices flowing. I started yesterday's show with a brief shout out to the fans for starting petitions. I mentioned the San Antonio Scorpions. Well, okay. I mentioned the San Antonio petition to get that city into MLS. I don't know how connected it is to the Scorpions. Probably not. I do know that the Crocketeers, the San Antonio Soccer Supporters Group, which again has existed for a couple of years now, pre-existed the San Antonio Scorpions, is behind the petition. They are using a hashtag on Twitter, hashtag MLS Ready. San Antonio, MLS Ready. The big news out of San Antonio when it comes to the petition is that Eva Longoria signed it, retweeted it, or tweeted it out. I guess she didn't actually retweet it, which may or may not take away from the tweet, from the support level, right? Eva Longoria is a big name, big celebrity, 6 million followers or something like that on Twitter, right? So I guess this is a big deal. I mean, it's easy for me to be cynical and say, look, how many of Eva Longoria's fans really care? How many of them really care about soccer in San Antonio? Probably not that bad. Look, I know. Tony Parker, yeah. Tony Parker, Ava and Tony used to be a thing. I imagine that Ava, and maybe I'm wrong here, maybe I'm casting aspersions in some way, but I imagine that part of her soccer fandom, if she is on board with MLS to San Antonio, relates to her relationship with Tony Parker. Or former relation. They are done, right? I'm not up on my gossip. Eva Longoria and Tony Parker no longer together, correct? The tweet says, which I'm assuming that this is a Trevor with the pun. I'm not even repeating that. I imagine that this is one of those automatically spat out kind of tweets when you go and sign the petition. I believe San Antonio is hashtag MLS ready. Join me in signing this petition to show your support. 234 retweets, 156 favorites from Eva Longoria as she supports San Antonio soccer. And I had a couple of people, MLS soccer in San Antonio, I had a couple of people tell me, look, it's easy to laugh at it. You know, we're just trying to show. And I get that. I don't want to downplay anyone's right to go out and start an online petition as a way to show support for something. I mean, whether you buy that they will actually impact, create an effect, impact the people making the decisions, that's a different question. But all pub is good pub, right? The MLS Ready petition has 2,333 signatures right now. I'm looking at it right now. That's a good start for those guys. It's only a couple of days old, right? So if you're interested in San Antonio getting MLS soccer, there you go. Go sign the petition. Maybe follow Eva Longoria because clearly she's involved. Sign the petition, tweet it out, and hashtag MLS Ready. The other petition that came to light yesterday, slightly less serious petition. This one from, I believe, our friend Maxi Rodriguez, who, full disclosure, is a Mexico national team fan. Which you can judge him for that if you want to. If you're a U.S. national team fan, it's fine. Hi, Maxi. Maxi and Zach Goldman, that damn Yank on Twitter, created a petition to ask President Barack Obama to fast-track the citizenship of Gideon Zelalem, the Arsenal phenom, product of Maryland, German-Ethiopian American player. Gideon is not currently a U.S. citizen. In order for him to become a U.S. citizen, there will be several hoops that he will need to jump through. It could possibly impact his European passport, which would then impact his work status in England, which would then require him to get a work permit, which may or may not come through. So there are a lot of things, a lot of barriers between Gideon Zelalem and U.S. citizenship in order to play for the national team. But for those of you who care and are interested, again, this is a bit of a joke, and I should pull up the text of the actual petition because it's pretty funny. It basically says, Dear President Barack Obama, please make Gideon Zelalem a citizen. Otherwise, he'll go to another country and they'll probably be communists. All right, it's funny. But Gideon saw this. Gideon has a relation. I don't know if I'm outing anybody here. I don't want to say any names. Gideon has a relationship with somebody I know who tweeted, and if you look around, you'll find this, who tweeted that Gideon was aware, texted him that Gideon was aware of the petition, and made the comment, well, where's Germany's petition? That gives you a little bit of an inkling that maybe Gideon's considering the United States at some point. At the same time, he's 17. He has no reason to make a decision now, and he probably won't. And he also texted this particular mutual friend and said, back in the summer, and said he's not in any rush to make a decision of who he's going to play for internationally. And there is the chances, whatever U.S. soccer does, we know they're going hard after Julian Green. Julian Green is already a citizen. Gideon Zelalem is not. Makes it a little bit tougher. Makes it a little bit of a harder sell, especially if it impacts his ability to play at Arsenal. So I just love the fact that there's a petition. I don't even know how many signatures it has. I don't think it matters. Maybe this should have been a whitehouse.gov petition instead. Because we need one of those. We need a soccer whitehouse.gov petition that merits a response. I know they upped the level that requires response. I think it's 100,000 signatures. Is there anything in the soccer world we can push that will get us 100,000 signatures so we can get an official response from the White House? I'd like to see that. Pro-Rel. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Jonathan Tannewald on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere. we go. Jonathan Tannenwald from Philly.com joins us now. Always a good time. Always a good chat with Mr. Tannenwald, who I believe, and I love when this works out, Jonathan. I believe you have some news that is breaking right at this moment as it relates to soccer in America.
I do indeed. Soccer United Marketing, which your listeners may have heard of, has announced the schedule and venues for the 2014 Road to Brazil series of matches that will take place across the United States from May 29th to June 7th, when 6 countries make final preparations for their World Cups.
Interesting.
Yes. We have the following games have been scheduled. It says here, Thursday, May 29th, Turkey versus Honduras at RFK Stadium in Washington. Suspect that will draw a pretty big crowd.
That will be a fun atmosphere.
Yes,
I might go out to that.
Those of you who are not from the Washington area, I believe that the nation's capital and its suburbs, especially in Northern Virginia, have the largest Honduran expat population in the country.
Yes. Hondurans and Salvadorians, yes.
Friday, May 30th, Bosnia and Herzegovina versus Ivory Coast.
Ooh.
Venue TBD.
Okay.
What that means.
Okay. That means we can go see Drogba somewhere, hopefully.
It sounds like it.
All right.
And Sunday, June 1st, Honduras versus Israel at BBVA Compass Stadium in Houston.
All right.
Tuesday, June 3rd, Greece, Nigeria, down the road from me at PPL Park.
Awesome.
The Union's Mobi Akugo might be interested in that game because he's of Nigerian descent.
I imagine he would be, yes. And I imagine that there will be a lot of Greeks in that audience, in that crowd as well.
I think that's probably right, too.
Yes.
Wednesday, June 4th, Ivory Coast versus El Salvador at Toyota Stadium in Frisco, Texas, the home of FC Dallas.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one.
Friday, June 6th, you want to talk about a lot of Greeks in a stadium. How about Greece, Bolivia at Red Bull Arena in Harrison, New Jersey?
Ah, yes, absolutely.
And then the capstone, Saturday, June 7th, Spain, El Salvador at FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland. That will be a doubleheader with DC United and the Columbus Crew.
That will
be a huge crowd.
Yeah, that'll fill that joint up and bump up DC's attendance numbers, which is always nice. Don't know how RFK will do this year, although they'll be better. So there you go. Your send-off or your Road to Brazil series of matches. Look, we just talked about this before we came on the air, Jonathan. The reason all of these teams are coming here, not only because SUM makes it worth their while, but because the time zones work out for Brazil close enough in most places. Then the facilities are good. The travel is easy. All of those things.
Look, if we bid on World Cups on existing facilities alone, I think we know what the U.S. would be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, none of those games no World Cup games at FedEx. I just can't. I know
it'll happen. Unless there's a new NFL stadium in place by then, I have to think they will.
We just talked to Charlie Bum yesterday. They're going to put a 100,000 seat domed stadium on the RFK site, Jonathan. They're going to do that. That's going to happen one day. I don't know how far in the future, but it's going to happen.
I'll believe it when I see it.
That team gets their way in this area.
I know.
All right.
I think it's still a long ways off.
No, I realize there's a lot of red tape involved, a lot of money that has to be moved around. All right, Jonathan, breaking the Road to Brazil news, which is out there now floating around. Go find it. But we also brought him on to talk about the Philadelphia Union, who is the team he covers on a week-to-week basis in MLS, and we may get to some TV topics with MLS and perhaps something else as it comes up. But let's start with the Union. I was accused of not giving the Union enough love this offseason, Jonathan, and that may be a little true. I certainly talked about the Maurice Adu move. I haven't really had a chance to dive into the Austin Berry trade, but this is a team that, at least on paper, has made significant improvements this offseason.
Well, I was about to say, you might not have given them much love, but they had to earn it first.
This is true, but but again, they have, just because they aren't as flashy as Toronto, and maybe we'll get into Sakevich versus Leiweke in a little bit, doesn't mean they don't deserve some attention, because look, they missed the playoffs by 3 points in goal differential last season, and if they can improve a little bit, they may be able to pip Houston or New England or somebody like that for a playoff spot.
I certainly think that they are a much better team this year than they were last year. I don't know if that means they're a really good team yet.
Okay.
Certainly they have not really had their offense come together yet in the preseason games that I've watched.
Okay.
But guys like Matt, and their upgrades in the midfield in particular, with Vincent Nogueira and Christian Maidana and Maurice Edu, they're much better there than they were. It's going to let them play a much more possession-oriented style of soccer, which I think the fan base here has been crying out for a long time. It sounds to me like that could mean the end of Trinidad international Keon Daniels' time with the Union, which people would probably give the team a standing ovation for here.
Up and down, Keon Daniel. I had moments where I liked Keon Daniel last season.
So did I, but they were all when he was playing in the Gold Cup for Trinidad.
You know what it is about Keon Daniel, and not to diverge from the topic here, but he looks the part, and you can tell he has the skills. He's just not consistent enough with it.
I had somebody, I will keep all of the names out of this for now, but I had somebody relay to me an anecdote from another Trinidad national player who said to this person, Keon Daniel's a good player if only he tried hard.
Right. Yeah, which tends to be there are guys who try hard and overachieve, and that's a lot. MLS has a lot of those guys. MLS has got plenty of players who are immensely talented and play down to a lower level for whatever reason. I guess you mentioned the offense not necessarily coming together in the preseason, and while I don't put a whole lot of stock in preseason soccer, you do need to see some progress. And you mentioned the midfield. And we know we'll get to the back line and the addition of Barry and what's going to happen with the Kugo. But who's going to score the goals? Jack Mack had a great start to the season and dropped off the table. Where did the goals come from?
They have to come from McInerney and Connor Casey to some degree once Casey gets healthy. He's dealing with a bit of a calf injury at the moment. But you cannot expect Connor Casey to play this year as much as he did last year.
No.
You couldn't really expect Connor Casey last year. Nobody expected him to play as much as he did.
No.
And they have to come from Jack McInerney. They have to come to some degree from Sebastian Letou, who looked awful in the game against Toronto a couple days ago. They've got guys in Maidana and Nogueira and even Maurice Edu who can serve the ball to McInerney the way he wants it, which he complained somewhat vocally about last year.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's going to be on McInerney if he gets that service to put the ball in the net.
Right.
And to not complain if the ball is 6 inches to the left or right of where he wants it, to grow up a little bit, go get the ball and put it in the net.
Yes, absolutely. But I think, look, we can point to the Gold Cup maybe as breaking up his season and having an impact, and I don't know if I have the timing exactly right, and you can tell me if the Gold Cup had any impact on Jack Mack's season.
I just don't. Here's why I understand why it could in theory, but I just can't. This is why I say he needs to grow up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's no doubt about that.
If you've got the natural talent that he's got,
right.
You get in a rut, and look, he's best at sort of this Chris Wondolowski-esque, get yourself in the right position to score.
Yes.
Kind of goal.
Yes.
And he came almost and nearly for a bunch of games last year for a while, and then he finally scored late in the season, and it was almost too late to save them. But I want to see him do better this year. I want to see him, as I said, grow up psychologically and not just have to have the ball exactly where he wants it in order to score.
Speaking of Sebastian Letou, Mike on Twitter, Thomas19064, he says, he asks you, will Cruz Letou be a platoon or will one of them emerge as a favorite? If Danny Cruz and Sebastian Letou are competing for the same position and Danny Cruz wins out, that would be interesting for me.
It would be too for me. But on the evidence we've seen lately, Cruz is playing a little better right now.
Okay.
Sebastian Letou has a tendency to drift a little bit, and they need this sort of 4-2-3-1 formation to hold its shape if they're going to win. And I want to see Letou step up a little bit in that way.
Danny Cruz seems. I mean, look again. The additions certainly make the midfield better. Again, we'll get to the back line in a second here. But Danny Cruz and look, he's one of those guys. He's the opposite of Keon Daniel. He's a limited player who tries really, really hard.
Works his backside off, yeah. And then gets his biggest problem is that he runs really hard at guys and either goes to the deck like a hockey player or runs all the way to the end line and runs out of things to do with the ball.
There's a reason that people mention football and his football past a lot when it comes to Danny Cruz. He plays soccer with that attitude. And to me, that sort of harkens back to what the Union were and what they should be attempting to evolve from, Jonathan.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. But they now, the impetus is on this group of players to step up, and it is on John Hackworth, really. He's under a lot of pressure right now to get this team winning right out of the gate and rack up some results, because they're going to need a good start. Even though their first game of the season is at Portland, which is going to be really tough. Their home opener is against New England. They play New England, Columbus, Montreal, and Chicago in order after that Portland game.
Yeah, that's the East Coast
All
heavy.
four of those teams are going to be competing for the 4 and 5 spots with the East.
Eastern teams that you have to take points off of if you're going to have a chance to beat them out in the standings at the end of the year. All right, let's talk about the trade. Let's talk about the back line. Let's talk about what that defensive makeup will be. Obviously, the headline right now is Austin Berry, 2012 MLS Rookie of the Year, moving over from the Chicago Fire. This seemed like an odd trade on the face. I mean, there's obviously the Mike McGee situation hanging over the heads of the Fire, and this is probably connected to that. But from a Union perspective, what does Berry bring to the table, and how does he impact personnel on the field? Is his partner Akugo, and we just go forward with that?
Well, let's start from this premise. This was a theft by the Union.
Yes.
This was an absolute theft. He fell into their laps because, look, Chicago has John Kennedy Hurtado, Patrick Ayani, Bakary Soumare, Gonzalo Segares. It amazes me.
Berry's better than all of those guys right now, by the way, in my opinion.
Well, right. It amazes me that Austin Berry was the odd man out.
Yes.
But yes, he will play alongside Amobi Akugo. We know that the Union had been sniffing around a little bit to get another center back because they weren't really satisfied, shockingly, with a bunch of second-round draft picks and other various guys who weren't quite ready yet to be full-time starters. Berry fits the bill perfectly, and I'd say better than some of the international guys they were scoping out.
Despite sort of trying to pick the best 11 and get the most effective team on the field, it seems like that center back position has been especially troublesome for the Union over the last couple of years. I mean, Soumare comes back, doesn't want to play in Philadelphia or wants to go back to Chicago, whichever the story was.
Soumare wanted to play in Philadelphia for a manager who was gone by the time he got here.
Okay, there's obviously managerial changes have a major impact on all of these things. You obviously had Jeff Park, who was a good servant while he was there and gets traded again for personal reasons, if that's the story, if I remember it correctly. So
it is.
It's a revolving door at center back, and the only consistent player there has been Akugo, who most people will argue is not best in that position.
And it's funny because I have had some very loud arguments with people about this. I think he is best in that position.
Okay.
And I think his national team future is in that position.
You could argue that. Certainly,
that's for another day.
Jonathan, if Oguchi Onyewu, and I know this is a Europe-based team that just got called up by Jurgen Klinsmann, but if Oguchi Onyewu was getting another look, then Amobi Akugo may have a future at center back for the U.S. national team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say you always need more center backs. You always need center back depth. And I think Akugo is going to be best served there. The revolving door thing I want to focus on for a minute, because there are a lot of revolving doors in Major League Soccer, if we're honest. And look, would it have helped if they could have figured out a way to both have Carlos Valdez in Philadelphia and get him on the Colombia's World Cup team? Absolutely. But Jose Peckerman wasn't going to let it happen. And, the Union hopefully at this point have made a little money by some of the transactions that they've done with him.
Jose Peckerman is a scourge on MLS, by the way. Throw that out there.
Yeah, he's the manager of Colombia's national team, for people who don't know. He wasn't the only factor in Freddie Montero leaving MLS, because obviously there's been a lot of money on the table for him. Right. But he was a big factor in it. And he was a big factor in Carlos Valdez leaving MLS. And this is a league where Colombians historically have done very well.
Yes. Peckerman has not caught up with the rest of the world. Jermaine Defoe got called up by England. Get your head together, Peckerman. It's fine. He hasn't played here yet, but you know what I'm saying. Look, so who's going to be the best four in the back for Philadelphia this season? Who do they head into the year with? We've established Berry and Akugo. What about those fullback spots?
Oh, Shannon Williams on the right, certainly, who was one of the best right backs in Major League Soccer, and also I think has a big time U.S. national team future.
Should get a better look. Yes, go ahead. I think you should. I think Shannon Williams should get a better look for the national team. Absolutely.
And Fabio Alves, nicknamed Fabinho, who's this Brazilian who a lot of people don't rate very highly. But you talk about center back being a revolving door over the last couple of years for the Union. Left back has been their biggest Achilles heel by miles ever since Jordan Harvey left for Vancouver.
Right.
And most observers of this team that I know would take him back in a heartbeat if the day ever comes when he falls out of favor in Vancouver. But for now,
Harvey
it's
all the time.
Fabinho over there. Ray Gaddis is probably a better one-on-one defender, but you can't really have a right-footed left back perpetually.
Well, you can, but it's not a good idea. Yeah, I'm with you. All right. So the outlook. Look, again, this team has improved. The questions that surround them are just about putting those pieces and all of the new pieces, and this is true for most teams who make major changes, in the right order, getting the right guys on the field. And I think we've established. Look, Sebastian Letou, has he hit the wall? Is he going to really fall off, and does that open the door for somebody else? And can that person who steps in be nearly as productive as they expected Letou to be when they finally got him back in town? And then who's going to score the goals? And how does that midfield work together? Which you have less concern about the midfield because the quality of the player than maybe you do about finding goals.
And Sebastian Letou is in what should be the ideal position for him. Mm-hmm. If he's not going to be an absolute striker, be on the right side of a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, however what you want to call it, is an ideal position for him. It is one in which he has thrived in the past in Vancouver and elsewhere. I see no reason why he can't do it here except for whatever's in his own head.
Yeah, made his MLS name on those back post runs. All right, let's transition from the Union here. Now that we've got that out of the way, and people can't bug me about talking about them, and just because you're our TV guy, our MLS TV guy, most of the time when news breaks, and I know there's no new news other than we're still negotiating, but I wonder if that means anything in and of itself, or if we are just sort of in a waiting. Holding pattern, waiting for that original leak to sort of come to fruition.
I expected something to arise out of the MLS broadcasters meetings in Orlando earlier this week, and I was very surprised that nothing did. My guess is that part of the disagreement here is how many U.S. national team games Fox is going to get eventually. Right. Because they want home World Cup qualifiers. ESPN is going to try as hard as it can to not give them up because they are some of the only soccer games in this country that generate really huge ratings outside of the World Cup itself.
Right.
What I want to know is what the future of MLS Live is, because ESPN has a platform here with ESPN3 to do something that it does often with college sports in particular, where it just takes all of a conference's games and runs them. And they don't even always necessarily have ESPN's graphics on.
Right. They'll grab
I would
those,
be interested to see whether MLS
feeds.
Live lands there someday. I think it would be a great move for the league. I raise this point because it is something that I have heard bandied about before, but not for a while. So I would not encourage your tinfoil hat brigade to go running around all of a sudden thinking something is going to happen, because I don't think it will. But if it comes back up someday, I think it would be a great idea.
All right, last thing in 30 seconds or less, because I'm up against it here. Is the news that Fox Sports 1 is going to run more Major League Baseball bad news potentially for MLS?
No, because we knew it was coming. We've known for a long time, in fact, it was coming.
Okay.
Anything that MLS is going to get out of Fox was already going to be scheduled around that. Fox wrote a very cleverly worded press release yesterday, which dodged the fact that some of these broadcasts may be simulcast of their regional sports networks.
Interesting. Okay.
not their own original broadcast teams.
I understand. Yeah, that's Fox Sports Net's all over the country. All right. Jonathan Tannenwald from Philly.com, little Union, little TV. We have run out of time, unfortunately. I'm sure we'll have Jonathan on in the near future. Go follow him at The Goalkeeper on Twitter and read his blog, The Goalkeeper blog, at Philly.com. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it, sir.
I hope the Tinfoil Hat Brigade has a wonderful weekend.
Yes, absolutely. Those guys, they deserve it. When we come back, Kyle McCarthy from Fox, speaking of, will join us. We'll talk through that U.S. men's national team roster, maybe some other topics as well. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
On the phone with me now from Fox and various other places, Kyle J. McCarthy on Twitter. Mr. Kyle McCarthy. Hi, Kyle.
Hi, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's Friday. I'm feeling ebullient, to use a 50-cent word. So I don't know what that means yet, but
are you allowed to use 50-cent words on Friday?
Probably not. I'm probably breaking some serious rules here. But look, I mean, we're getting ever closer to the MLS season. I know you feel that buzz, that tingle in the air as the 2014 campaign approaches. And we've got a U.S. men's national team roster to talk about. I know it's the friendly, but it's still the last FIFA date before the World Cup, or before the World Cup team is named, and it features some interesting characters. Why don't we go down what Jurgen Klinsmann has called in for this Ukraine friendly that has now been moved to Cyprus? What's the one name that stands out to you that is maybe not most surprising, but the guy that you're sort of, wrinkle your forehead about and maybe wonder if he can actually make an impact and put his name back in the mix?
Juan Agudelo is that guy for me. When you look at how this forward group is shaping up and the opportunity there for someone to make a late run, I think Juan Agudelo is the guy who could do that. And the fact that he's on this roster and that he settled well at Utrecht gives him an opportunity to really state his case. And I think it'll be interesting to see how that develops for him in early March.
Is the argument for Agudelo, and I may or may not have made this argument in print myself, is the argument for him that he is the one guy left in the forward pool, the one that you don't expect, that isn't already a shoo-in, that can change a game in the last 10 minutes? I mean, is there another guy that Klinsmann can call in that he's not already going to take that can do that?
I don't know. And I think he really could be that guy. He's got oodles of talent. He is the sort of player who possesses the ability to actually make an impact at the World Cup. And when you look at some of the alternatives in that spot, you can't say that about a lot of guys. And talent is really difficult to ignore. And Agudelo is the sort of guy who has that little extra trick in the bag, who can make a difference late in games. For him, it's just a matter of being able to convince Klinsmann of his utility in that role.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's clearly the best way for him to get on the squad is to be that guy. And, we've obviously seen you mentioned his talent. We've obviously seen him pull goals out of nowhere. And I look at what's probably going to the World Cup: Josie Altidore, Aaron Johansson, Clint Dempsey. These guys, I don't see Eddie Johnson. I don't see, magic. And I see magic in Juan Agudelo. And maybe I'm overrating that as a fan, Kyle.
Well, magic is nice. Everybody likes magic. And I think at the World Cup, you have to have something different when you look down your bench and you're trying to spark your team. And Juan Agudelo is different. He's the sort of character who can change things a little bit, and you need those sort of alternatives. Now, the question is whether Jurgen Klinsmann agrees. I'm not so sure, but Agudelo will at least have the opportunity to impress. And that's a big step for him after being out in the wilderness for a little while.
On this roster, Terrence Boyd is direct competition for that fourth forward spot if Klinsmann decides to go with four forwards, because we may see him decide, look, I've got Donovan, I've got Dempsey. I don't need to take four out-and-out strikers. I can go with three and have a deeper midfield. But in this particular team headed to Cyprus, or headed to Europe to train and then going to Cyprus, there's another name that jumps out. It's the return of Gooch, Kyle. Now, look, it's been a really, really rough couple of years for Oguchi Onyewu. I don't know that this necessarily means he has a shot to squeak into the national team for the World Cup, but it's good to see him called in a moment when he's at least feeling some kind of success at the club level.
I think that's fair, and when you look at Onyewu, it's sort of the same thing as Agudelo, isn't it? I mean, when you look at the U.S. center back pool, and you look at Onyewu's track record, yes, he's had problems with injuries over the past few years, but you know that if everything's clicking, he gives you something that you don't have. So the fact that he's getting healthy at this point, and the fact that he might be able to contribute, he presents a sort of option that Klinsmann can't ignore.
Are you saying that between the two of them, Gonzalez and Bees are a little soft? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that Onyewu is just a different sort of defender than the top three guys in the pool right now. So if he's healthy and he's feeling it, then you have to have a look at him and see, well, is this just a mirage? Is this just a temporary thing? Or is he capable of being a contributor in a World Cup situation? Am I sure that his body is going to be able to hold up under the duress of a tournament with that many games in such a short span of time? I'm not, but you have to at least evaluate the scenario.
Absolutely. Now, another different type of defender who I've always, before he hit his own batch of struggles, who I maintained was sort of the prototypical Jurgen Klinsmann center back, is Tim Ream. He's playing at Bolton now. He's been moved around position-wise a lot since he got over there. Most recently playing as an emergency left back. We know Tim Ream has kind of transcendent sort of talent with the ball as a center back, but it's his defending and his decision making that's always been a problem. He seems to be on the outside looking in right now. What can he do in this game if he gets some time to change Jurgen Klinsmann's mind?
He has to prove his defensive capabilities. Everyone knows about his left foot. Everybody knows that he can distribute out of the back, and that's important. But he's got to be able to defend at the highest level. And Ream has been a little intermittent in that quality over the course of his career. Is he capable of doing it? Perhaps. Mm-hmm. And there's an opportunity there to impress and an opportunity to really state his case. He just has to make sure that he's rock solid in his defending. That means his marking, his positioning, winning the ball, and figuring out a way to really be an alternative to the guys who are already in the mix.
Lots of guys who can play in central defense in this roster. John Brooks, Jeff Cameron, Alfredo Morales, Gucci Onyewu. Will Packwood is making a return to the national team picture after his own injury issues. What do you think about Will Packwood and his potential future with this team? I mean, he gets called in, that's good. He's only 20 years old, and there would seem to be a future ahead of him, but it was easy to forget him while he was dealing with all of that.
It makes sense to give him a look now. It's a good reward for him getting back to form, getting back to fitness, and playing fairly consistently with Birmingham City. I don't really see him as a World Cup option at the moment. No. I think this is more of a let's check in and see where he's at in his progression. But it's a good sign for him that he's been able to get healthy and get into a spot where he warrants a call up into this camp.
It's good to see. It's always good to see guys coming back from injury. And Onyewu and Packwood definitely fit that bill. Looking further through this team, Bedoya, Bradley, no surprises there. McDiscarud, Fabian Johnson, who is listed as a midfielder. When are we going to get that shift to left back for Fabian Johnson, Kyle?
Sooner rather than later, you would think.
Okay.
I mean, when you're going into a World Cup year and you're looking at this roster, you have to think he's going to be a left back heading to Brazil. So I'm a little surprised that full-time shift hasn't happened yet, but we'll see.
We've seen for years Landon Donovan was playing in midfield and listed as a forward. So hopefully this isn't a sign that Klinsmann will keep Fabian Johnson in midfield when he is probably best used as a left back. Again, it's a gaping hole. And another guy on the left side who actually does have the potential to make the World Cup team for some of the same reasons Juan Agudelo is a candidate, in that he brings something different that isn't really there through the rest of the pool, is Brek Shea. Now he's at Barnsley on loan. We know that his move to England wasn't entirely smooth, to be kind. But does he have enough, and can he play enough to convince Klinsmann that, hey, look, I don't have another winger like Brek Shea with a left foot like his in my pool. I might need him in Brazil.
It warms my heart to talk about a Barnsley player anywhere. But and for Brek Shea, I think the move to the Oakwell was important for him. And it gives him a chance to get some match practice, get regular playing time. And I do think he provides something a little different. And it's sort of like Agudelo in the sense that if you look down your bench in the final 20 minutes and you look at Brek Shea, that's something different than what you've got.
Mm-hmm.
And whether he can make an impact at the World Cup is there to be seen, but you know that there's enough intriguing material there that you want to have a look at it.
Now, the name that's going to jump out for a lot of U.S. soccer fans, because we are always enraptured by potential and the future, is Julian Green, the Bayern Munich academy or Bayern Munich player playing currently with the reserves in the 4th division there and scoring a ton. He has a choice to make eventually over which country he'll represent. This is only a training stint. Is it normal? Maybe I just don't recall, Kyle. Is it normal for a player like Julian Green, who's going to train but is not going to play, to be listed on the roster?
Yeah, I don't recall. I know that it's happened before, and I know that those are usually. It usually doesn't happen as permanently as this, though.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big public deal, and it's a sign for both sides. There's some interest there, and we'll see how it sort of unfolds, because Green, as you said, has a very significant decision to make, and perhaps in rather short order.
Now, I guess it doesn't hurt, and I'm not going to make this about anybody but what's on this roster, but I guess it doesn't hurt for Klinsmann to be proactive with these dual internationals. Certainly for a guy like Green, who has citizenship and could choose the United States tomorrow if he wanted to. But then again, he's very young. He has yet to play a senior level match in Germany. Don't really know what his future is going to be. Is some of this wasted energy, or is this perfectly okay? Put him on the roster, call him in for training. It's a friendly anyway.
I think it's good for Klinsmann. I think it's good for the U.S. national team. You can't afford to ignore talent, and Julian Green certainly has talent. German youth international, a guy who is scoring for fun for Bayern Munich reserves, and when you have the opportunity to go outside the pool a little bit and find a guy who could be an important part of your team for an extended period, I think it's worth it to bring him in and have a look. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But at least you expended a little bit of that energy to see whether it was a good fit for both sides.
You have to wonder, and I've maintained, I've said this on some of my other shows, I've maintained that, until the United States grabs one of these kids that really does have a shot to play with Germany one day, or another country of Germany's level, then it doesn't mean a whole lot. You get Terrence Boyd to play for the U.S., that's great, but it's not quite the same thing, because Terrence Boyd was never going to represent Germany as a full international. And I guess there's really no damage done if they don't get Julian Green, if he does end up playing for Germany. But I had a discussion with someone on Twitter yesterday about legacy and this being Klinsmann's. He identified Klinsmann as the guy to go out and get these dual internationals and really make a push, and that this is his greatest legacy, or one of his greatest legacies. And I said, well, I would actually say Bob Bradley was the guy that did this first, that started this. He got Jermaine Jones in the team, so on and so forth. Would you? But then again, Klinsmann's got more tools available to him. Would you give credit to the push, especially for the German Americans, to Bradley or to Klinsmann, or is it a split credit?
I look even further back. I mean, this is a practice that's been going on for years and years.
Sure.
I mean, you look at David Regi at the 1998 World Cup.
Well, that's a special case that we don't want to talk about, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, no, but I mean,
we fudged the system there.
Always been good at this, like always looking and trying to bring in different players and have a glance at things. And I give credit to Bradley. I give credit to Klinsmann. I give credit to Bruce Arena and Boris Milutinovic.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is not a new practice, and it's something that U.S. coaches feel they have to do to improve the options at their disposal. And I think that's just the reality of the situation. Yeah,
I'm going to opine a bit. You don't have to agree, disagree, or comment, but I am of the opinion, while I am absolutely fine with going after Julian Green or even Gideon Zelalem, who's not yet a citizen and is therefore not eligible and is only 17 years old, I maintain that U.S. soccer is not fully mature until those are bonus players. Those aren't I'm not saying that they'd be the core now, but we focus so much on Julian Green. we should be getting some of those kids out of this country. And that doesn't mean I don't want him on the team. It just means that I would feel a little bit more pride if we end up with that level of player being born and raised and grown up in this country.
There's something to be said for that, for sure. But you don't want to close out any avenues either.
No, certainly not.
Talent is important.
The rules,
you have to do what you do.
Right, and the rules are there, and they're clear right now. They may upset some people, like the president of the Icelandic Football Association, but they are what they are for the moment. And the United States should use every opportunity it can, because you could also make the argument that, and I'm sure you'd be on board with this as well, Kyle. The better the United States does in international competition, especially the World Cup, the more likely we are to develop those kids eventually anyway.
It just pays forward in the end.
Yep. There you go. Kyle McCarthy from Fox. Please go check out Inside MLS, the new MLS-focused blog over there at foxsports.com. Is that where they can find it? That's right?
Yeah.
There you go.
And make sure to check out the new redesign. Just went live last night.
Ooh.
So, Fox Soccer looks all new and shiny.
Redesigns are always fun. As long as it doesn't look like Yahoo's blogs, I'm fine, because Yahoo's blogs are terrible. Kyle McCarthy joining us. Kyle J. McCarthy on Twitter. Go follow him. Thanks for your time as always, Kyle. Appreciate it, man.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right.
Have
a good weekend as he prepares for the MLS season like the rest of us. Kyle covering MLS. He covers Liga MX over there at Fox as well. And now we are done with guests for a Friday. The show is yours now. It belongs to you. 347-756-6276 is the phone number. The phone lines are open. I will answer your phone call. You can talk about whatever's on your mind. And look, to the point of Gideon Zelalem and Julian Green and Sean Parker, who came up yesterday as one of the players that Klinsmann is really pushing for. Again, you can't fault you. You'd rather the coach of the U.S. national team go after every one of these possibilities. Don't leave these opportunities. Don't leave these opportunities behind and not make the effort if these players have the potential to help your team. That's clear. John Brooks, same thing. Even Terrence Boyd, even Jermaine Jones and Timmy Chandler, even though that didn't work out. These are American players. If they are good enough to be in the national team, they should be in the national team. And again, this isn't about what I want the national team to look like right now, because I want the best team on the field, whatever that means. But I will feel better if we ever get to a future where we are less dependent on this avenue to get us to where we want to be. To push this team beyond the standard that's set right now, which right now the standard is get out of the group, basically. I think that's the bottom, that's the basic goal every time the United States goes to the World Cup. Get out of the group and then see what happens. Well, we won a knockout round game in 2002, finished last in 2006, won the group, fell to Ghana in 2010. Let's progress. And I guess if that means dual internationals, then yeah, do that. Absolutely. Julian Green wants to step in and take a spot in this team. Until there's an American produced player who is as good as Julian Green, I'm not going to complain. 718, you're on the air.
Hey, what's going on, Jason? It's Eddie in Brooklyn.
Hey, what's up, man? Been a long time. What's up?
Yeah, long. Life caught up with me. No, I'm just calling to officially announce to U.S. Soccer that my son is going to try to play for the Costa Rica national team. That way, he gets the attention of the U.S. men's national team.
So wait, but okay, because your son is a dual citizen, has the ability to play for Costa Rica, he's gonna declare himself for Costa Rica so that U.S. Soccer will pay attention, because otherwise they wouldn't give a crap.
Exactly. There you go.
It's an interesting opinion, Eddie. That's an interesting way to look at it. I mean, I think it's funny, and maybe there's a grain of truth to it. But I don't know.
A little bit. I mean, I personally want him to play for the U.S. men's national team instead of Costa Rica because he was born here. That's just my way of thinking. You know, I know there's your heritage, but this is where you're.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah,
you're going to come up through the system.
I'm sure you could handle that.
It's going to take.
I'm sure.
Okay, we'll go that route.
I'm sure in 20 years, yeah, you could really handle rooting for the U.S. national team with your son on it against Costa Rica.
No. If he's playing to Costa Rica, I'm rooting against him.
No, I said if he plays for the U.S., you're going to root for him you're going to root for the U.S. against Costa Rica when your son's on the team.
No, I'm going to root for Costa Rica, even if my son is on the U.S.
Oh, okay. I got you. Well, I'm glad you're true to your principles, Eddie.
Yeah, I'm loyal to a fault.
All right. Let me ask you while I got you on the line. Eddie is our resident Costa Rica fan. He is massive. He used to call in the Best Soccer Show and give us crap about the Hex all the time. How big of a deal, and I know he's out there, and I'm sure you'd love to see him doing his thing at Arsenal, but how big of a deal is Joel Campbell and the goal against Manchester United and sort of this notion that there's a Costa Rican player making that kind of wave in the Champions League?
It's huge. I don't understand. Is it the new American thing that, we don't have that guy in the Champions League, so it's maybe not as important? But let's be honest.
Wait,
if that was an American who did what Joel Campbell did, y'all would have lost the same mind that I lost.
Well, okay, look, Eddie, you want to paint with a broad brush, be my guest. I've done it on this show.
I genuinely think, that's been the narrative so far. Like, I'm seeing Lala's talking about it. Who's to say that that's important, that's necessary?
That's fine. Look, you want to call out anybody else, you're talking to me. I've been consistent with this. Well, look, it's a big deal that Joel Campbell scored in the Champions League. It absolutely is. I'm not going to lie and say it's not. And if an American scored there, yeah, we'd be celebrating that. But I've maintained that this, first of all, just one player in that competition doing that sort of thing, what kind of effect does that have? I mean, I'm not
saying it's effect. It's just a pride and a perception.
Oh, no.
They're at the highest level. And there's one player for now, because I actually think Keylor Navas, I actually think that I could see him end up at a place like Atletico Madrid by next season. So we could be talking about two Costa Ricans being in the knockout rounds in Champions League next season.
That's fine.
I mean, we're a small country. We really shouldn't be having these kind of opportunities when you really think about our resources.
Well, okay, but it's a small country that is soccer mad and has been doing this. I mean, I know it's been a progression just like everybody else in CONCACAF, but it's not like Costa Rica is new to producing players. It's just that the rest of the world is new to paying attention.
Yeah.
Okay. So look, and again, this is part of again, I'm not trying to diminish what Joel Campbell did, and I'm not trying to say I wouldn't be excited if that was an American player scoring that goal. But I think context matters, Eddie. So Joel Campbell's at Olympia again. He's an Arsenal player, which is a big deal. He's at Olympiacos, which is a good side in a weaker European league. I mean, they're undefeated in that league. That league has had some major problems. Half those teams are really, really broke. So, I mean, all of that stuff is context. And if an American player, look, Sasha Kljestan's at Anderlecht. Mm-hmm. I think that if you put up Anderlecht against Olympiacos, those are pretty even teams in terms of the type of quality they have. I don't know who wins necessarily.
I disagree with that. I think a lot of people have been underestimating Olympiacos' quality. This isn't a team that just goes to the Champions League to go to the Champions League. They've actually competed somewhat historically.
No, I realize that. Look, I realize they have a big name and that they're a bigger name club than Anderlecht. I'm not trying to compare that level. I'm just saying that really you're splitting hairs if you're going to say that scoring, that playing at Olympiacos is that much bigger than playing at Anderlecht in a better league. Belgium's a better league than Greece right now, top to bottom. And again, if Sasha Kljestan scores a goal in the knockout rounds of the Champions League, yeah, we go nuts. I'm just not going to draw it out. And this was my only issue. I'm just not going to draw it out to mean something about where American soccer sits. And I'm certainly not going to make it a fight with Costa Rica over the only time I care about Costa Rica and whether or not they're better than the U.S. on any level is when they're playing them. That's the only time I care. I'm happy to see Costa Rican players go abroad and make a name. And I don't think it's a competition. And I don't think the United States, that American soccer fans should go, well, look what Costa Rica is doing. We must really suck. I don't think that's the case.
That to me, all right, that's a bit too much. But to say that it's not important to have a U.S. player succeeding in the most prestigious and most watched tournament with the highest competition, to say that it means nothing, like I've been seeing some people saying, I think that's absolutely ridiculous. And just back to the whole Sasha Kljestan thing, Sasha Kljestan isn't even an impact player on his national team. Joel Campbell is an impact player on Costa Rica. So his caliber right now, to me, Joel Campbell has a possibility of becoming the best player Costa Rica has ever produced since Juan Chop. And everybody remembers what Juan Chop did in the Premier League about not even 10 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, there are a lot of there's a lot of stuff happening within the sphere of CONCACAF, World Soccer. The United States has the U.S. pull for players who have been abroad. I mean, again, Michael Bradley Okay, yeah, he was a part-time player for Roma, but he might be in the Champions League next year. What does that mean? Anything? Does it mean anything that he's not? I don't know. I mean, I guess you care about that stage because it puts your country out there, and it puts, hey, look, a Costa Rican player can do this. We should go find more Costa Rican players. There's something to be said for that. But if MLS is going to be able to keep these players playing at a high level, give them an opportunity to build the game here, which ultimately for us, for Americans and U.S. national team fans, is going to be more important to national team success than sending a couple guys over to a couple of teams in Europe, I'm okay with that.
No, I agree. You give me a 600% pay raise, I'm moving to South Dakota if you want me to.
Well,
okay
there's that too. Yeah, there's that
but,
too.
you know, just I understand the importance of that, but let's not also try to diminish the importance of having that player in the Champions League, because they're both equally important.
I am not throwing shade on your boy. I'm not. Don't worry about it.
No, just before you have to move on anything, I do want to bring up one thing, because I was listening yesterday about the Premier League being the best league and because they're the best brand and all this crap that I've been hearing about. I noticed that a lot of people punish La Liga because, you know, a club like Madrid is going to demolish Elche 3-0, 4-0. But I want to ask you, name me one Premier League team right now, even at the highest level, that Madrid wouldn't demolish 3-0 tomorrow.
None. But that doesn't necessarily mean, for me, that doesn't necessarily mean best.
I understand that. But for me, for people to punish La Liga because of that, I think isn't fair, because there isn't a team in the Premier League that wouldn't suffer the same fate.
No, but you compare
like a party.
You can't compare. You can't compare them that way, Eddie. I think that
No, I'm not trying to. No,
but I'm saying
that's been an argument against La Liga that I don't agree with.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I don't think that when you're discussing which league is the best, you can compare them in that way.
Exactly.
First of all,
I just wanted to bring that up because that's the one argument I know people are using.
Okay,
Eddie, I think it isn't fair.
I think first of all, this is a subjective thing to begin
with, course,
right? So you may decide that the team or the league that has the best teams, one or two teams, top team in the world, is the best league. That's it. So if Madrid goes on to win the Champions League and demolishes everybody in the process, and look, we know what Barcelona has done, and they fight it out for the title, then we can say, well, La Liga is the best league in the world. But that doesn't mean that for me, where I may care a little bit more week to week about the competition being more level, because look, I'm American, I like parity. I like the idea that West Brom can walk into the Emirates and get a point or get a win. Whether that's what everybody else wants is different. So I may say that the Premier League is best because, it not only is it at a high level, it's probably not the highest level because there's Bayern Munich and Real Madrid out there, but it not only is it at a high level, it's more even across the board from 1 to 20 than La Liga is, certainly than the Bundesliga is. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Like, the way I view it as, like, if I'm going to a party, right, and they say, yo, there's 20 broads at this party. There's two of them. One has 3 dimes, a couple of hard 8s, a few 6s or 7s, and the rest are like 2s. And the other one has no dimes, a couple of hard 8s, and a solid 5 and 6 across the board. Which party do you think I'm going to? I'm going to the one with a couple of dimes and hard 8s. Like, a lot of people, they think, they view La Liga as Madrid playing this club or Barcelona playing this club. And they think that La Liga teams are weak because they don't educate themselves enough. They're not watching Athletic Club Bilbao against Villarreal or Valencia and seeing what these clubs are doing. Osasuna hasn't faced defeat with Madrid, Atletico Madrid, and Barcelona coming to their ground.
It's again, it's a subjective thing.
Of course.
When Roy Keane says that, what he means is the defending champion got waxed against Olympiacos, a team from a fairly weak league that may or may not be better than Manchester. I don't know. Again, it's a subjective thing. All right, I seem to have lost Eddie. I hung up on Eddie accidentally. Apologize for that. 770, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason, it's Chase.
What's up, man?
Hey, so going back to the U.S. roster announcement, I had a friend ask me about this, so I wanted to put it to you. Should we just stop? Should we give up asking about Timmy Chandler? I know about the knee injury. What percentage would you say he's in Brazil?
0.001%.
Okay.
It's not happening. It's not
happening.
You know what? The only way you can judge this, the only way you can take a guess at this is by looking at the signs out there, okay? And there's no signs that Timmy Chandler is in Jurgen Klinsmann's plans. And yeah, injury has been a part of that. but there's just no reason to believe it's the case. And he may be the best right back option right now, but that doesn't mean Klinsmann is going to take him because he has shown no reason to. And again, I mean, Timothy Chandler hasn't really given us a reason to be confident that he'll be okay in Brazil. I mean, we're talking about a guy who went to Central America and just folded. If that's going to happen, do you really want him in Manaus where it's going to be 100 degrees with 100% humidity?
Right. I mean, you can understand the risk there. Just going to see your opinion on it. So I was about where you were. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think we just let that one go. Appreciate the phone call, Hayes.
All right.
Good night, man. All right, let's move on. Some talk about the best league in the world discussion on Twitter. Andy says everybody whines about a 2-team league in Spain. Then all those soccer hipsters talk about Germany as the best league now. Look, again, best changes definition from person to person. If you only care about the highest level of soccer being played in that league, and that makes that league the best, then right now your options are the Bundesliga because Bayern Munich is the best club team in the world, or maybe La Liga if you somehow believe Real Madrid is better, or maybe Barcelona is coming back up. I mean, the very nature of that word can mean a lot of different things. Now, when I think of best, or the way I personally define best, I want entertainment. I want I want good atmospheres. I want entertaining soccer. I want a quick pace to the game. That's the kind of soccer I like. It's my personal preference. That's why I would say that week to week, the Premier League is the best league in the world because it's the best entertainment product. Now, not everybody is going to go with that line of thinking. That's fine. Roy Keane clearly doesn't. I don't know what the difference between brand and league is at this point when it comes to the Premier League. Their brand is the league. Their league is the brand because they've built this up. They spend so much money on players. They put themselves out there on such a level and have built themselves up with as many foreign internationals as they have in that league. I just find it difficult that on some level you can't argue that it's still the best league in the world, whether they win in Europe or not. They don't have the best teams in the world. Does that mean the league's not the best in the world? The league is more than 2 teams or 3 teams or 4 teams. The league is 1 through 20. 818, you're on the air.
Hey, it's Goodman Brown from Hollywood. I wanted to touch on, I'm a little bit behind listening to it, but when you guys were talking about the European competition, between La Liga, the Premier League, stuff like that, to see who's the better team. And the Costa Rican guy that called kind of touched on it again. On a totally different level, if you do that competition between Mexican league teams and Major League Soccer league teams, who do you think wins at the end of the day? That same competition, just between Major League Soccer and the Mexican league teams.
The competition I mentioned yesterday, where you actually pit like number 5 against number 5. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
The Mexican team wins. The Mexican league wins 1 through probably 14, something like that. I mean, most of the time.
I disagree. I think I think Mexican leagues will win 1 through 4, maybe 1 through 5.
Okay.
But after that, I mean, you can't tell me that Houston Dynamo and Chicago Fire can't compete with, some of the lower Mexican league teams.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about matching up where they finished in the standing. So you have to remember that even if you can argue that the Houston Dynamo would be better than the 17th place team in Liga MX, they're not going to be playing the 17th place team in Liga MX. Do you know what I'm saying? So you've got who's the defending champion? Is Club America the defending champion, or no, I got that wrong?
I don't even know.
Whatever.
Three different championships every year.
It's not even, forget the playoffs. Let's just do it on table, okay? The Red Bulls won the Supporter Shield last year. They would go up against the 2013 Apertura, the 2013 Apertura winner in Liga MX, right? Right. So I think I'm chalking that up as a loss. And then
Me too.
So, and you go down that, but as you go down that list, and I don't have all right, hold on. I'm going to try to pull this.
Here's why you're pulling that up.
Okay.
The reality is that parity wins this for Major League Soccer because the teams that struggled last year, and let's take the bottom two out of the equation, because they're going to be tough in every league. But when you look at the teams in Major League Soccer that are on the playoff cusp, or that finished mid-table in a single-table system, your Chicago Fires, your Montreal, these teams are going to do just fine up against, Puma and Tigres and teams that finish in the 9th, 10th position in Mexico.
Okay, this is a little bit interesting, partly because of Mexico's split season. So I'm going to be comparing the MLS standings from 2013 to Liga MX, the Apertura, which we just finished heading into the winter. Okay, so this is a little bit, it might not be exactly fair just because of the schedule differences, but you have Club America versus the Red Bulls. You have Sporting Kansas City versus Santos Laguna. Leon and the Timbers.
Timbers wins.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm with you on that one. Cruz Azul.
I'm not sure either, yeah.
Cruz Azul, who right now is destroying that league against Real Salt Lake. I would go with Cruz Azul on that. Toluca and the Galaxy. I don't know.
That'd be a good fight.
Okay.
That would be a good fight.
I don't know enough about Toluca right now to say either way. Morelia and the Seattle Sounders.
I'm going to go Seattle.
All right. Querétaro.
It's also important. This has to be a home and home.
No, sure.
Right?
Yes, sure.
It would have to be.
Yes.
If
we're creating this imaginary league out of thin air, then yes.
This is the new Superliga.
Yes. Querétaro and the Revolution.
Well, I would love to see Querétaro against Seattle, just to have that kind of, or Vancouver. That would be nice.
Yeah, but
payback.
You wouldn't end up with that. You'd end up with the Revolution playing.
No, of course not.
I
think the Revolution has a chance there.
Okay, all right.
We'll see.
Tigres finished in 8th place in the Apertura, and the Rapids were your 8th place team last year in MLS.
Again, we're getting into the.
All right.
This is a crapshoot section,
right.
And that's really what my only point was once we get to Querétaro and down. This is a crapshoot. And again, Chivas USA is probably going to get clobbered, based on their team last year. Toronto's going to struggle, again, based on their team last year.
Right.
But, in the middle of the pack here, there's no reason to think that the Mexican teams win running away on any of these.
All right, fair enough. Now, the Mexican League, these teams go up and down fairly quickly. I mean, they're right now. Guadalajara is in 4th place in the Clausura. They finished 16th in the Apertura.
Right, they've struggled the last couple of years.
Monterrey, who went on a run of CONCACAF Champions League titles, finished 11th in the Apertura and missed the playoffs. So it tells you that first of all, they have bigger budgets. We know that. That's part of the major reason for saying that most of the time I think the Mexican team wins. But you have a point that maybe from 8 or 9 on down, it gets a little bit dicey. But you have Chivas USA up against UNAM Pumas. So I don't know that that's, as you said, that maybe that's the easy one to pick. And maybe at the bottom it gets a little loose, but I don't know. I still think you're dealing with 10 or 12, 14 Mexican wins out of 19.
I don't think so. I think it goes about 500.
Okay.
And you got to remember, that we'll see. That's what makes this next round of Champions League, CONCACAF Champions League, exciting. Because Cruz Azul is a buzzsaw, but Major League Soccer is a good team in there. In that fight right now. And I'm not saying that the Mexican or the MLS teams are going to sweep or anything, but these are going to be good fights, and nothing would make us happier, I think, as MLS fans, to see Kansas City move on.
Yes,
that
right.
Toluca, San Jose, that's going to be interesting. Toluca's a good team, but it's going to be interesting.
No, absolutely. And the Galaxy Cholos has so many subplots. It's going to be fantastic.
God, yeah, that's. I'm going to try and go to both of those, actually. But,
now, just to finish this off, I think on a humorous note, DC United was so bad in 2013, they don't even get to play a Mexican team because there's not enough to go around. Because there's
19 MLS teams and only 18. Yes, that'd be very interesting.
That's they could play themselves, and they probably still lose. Thanks for the time, man. I appreciate it.
All right, have a great show.
All right, let's get to the NASL news from yesterday. The NASL has announced a new playoff format. I'm going to use the word playoffs because that's what this is. They choose not to. They want to call it something else. They're going to call it the championship, capital T, the championship. It's an interesting change. What they're doing is rather than the spring season winner and the fall season winner meeting up in the soccer bowl hosted by the spring winner, they're going to put 4 teams into the championship with the spring winner, the fall winner, and the top 2 point earning teams over the course of the entire NASL calendar campaign. So the spring plus the fall. Now, this does give some impetus for teams who win in the spring to keep pushing, or for teams. I suppose that if you win the spring, first of all, you're guaranteed to host one of the semifinals if you win the table in that particular season. So if you are finished first in the spring, you'll host a semi. Finish first in the fall, you'll host a semi. I guess it gives more reason for these teams to keep competing, which is good. I think it's interesting they're avoiding the word playoffs, and beyond that, I mean, it's fine. They want to try to value the single table while also having a little bit of a quick run tournament at the end of the year. It's not, and by the way, it's not called the game's not called the Soccer Bowl anymore. It's called the Championship Final, and the trophy is called the Soccer Bowl because let's just confuse everybody. But even more interesting than that news, and it's good, it's fine, good, whatever. Go for it. NASL. I'm rooting for an NASL. I really am. I've always said you need a strong second division in this country. But more interesting than that news is what Bill Peterson said while discussing that news yesterday. And by the way, the NASL embargo, they sent out a press release on Wednesday night. They embargoed it until 1 p.m. the next day. Peterson got on a conference call yesterday morning while we were on the air to discuss it. I don't really understand embargoes, but hey, whatever. He said in his comments, taking shots at MLS, there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity here. Sorry, hold on 1 second. I'm trying to find the actual story, and I may have clicked on the wrong one. Let me get the comments up. Here we go. Click link 2, not link 1 on your Google search. Me. Can somebody tell me, is he going to have 32 or 42 teams? Peterson asked rhetorically, without mentioning Don Garber's names. How many is he going to have? Every day he announces another city. I've got to send him an update of where we're going so he can announce that next. Now, clearly, Bill Peterson's a little bitter. MLS has designs on a couple of NASL cities. There's an NASL team in Fort Lauderdale. MLS is going to go to Miami. There's an NASL team in San Antonio. Don Garber has mentioned that market. There's an NASL team in Minnesota. Don Garber has mentioned that market. There are plenty of places that are crossing over, and it's becoming a bit of a war. And Peterson is obviously a tad ticked off about this. He said that the attitude, in referencing the attitude about competing with MLS, he says it's starting to change a little bit. Now, when technically we're in New York before they made it to New York City. Now they're talking about Minnesota and Atlanta and San Antonio and other places, Miami. I can't follow it. I think every market is a little different. I think in some cities we feel very comfortable that we can continue to do what we're doing and growing the way we're growing, and that there will be no adverse effects to us, to what we're trying to accomplish. Other cities, they're trying to figure that out, but it's a little difficult because MLS is not very clear, not that they have to be, on what they're doing or where they're going. There seems to be some NFL alignment with teams and stadiums. If that's the way they're going, that might not affect us at all. That's the opposite direction of where we're going. We're trying to build something that really aligns with the rest of the world. Okay. I have no problem with Bill Peterson standing up for his league, advocating his league, putting his product out there. I do think that it's counterproductive to set himself up and to set NASL up as a direct competitor to MLS, because it's not. Now, I know that the American attitude, the American spirit says, I'm never going to settle for second best. Why would you start a soccer league with some teams that existed, new teams all over the place? Why would you do that with the outward goal of being second best? How do you sell we're second best to the American sports-loving public? There aren't a lot of Americans who willingly choose to consume second best. It's part of MLS's problem. I could go watch the Premier League and La Liga Why would I even care about MLS? It's not even second best. So I get that. But NASL is not competing with MLS. Even in those markets where MLS is trying to find more places to expand, where NASL already exists. And if you need direct evidence of this, look no further than the San Antonio supporters group and their petition. The Crocketeers on their website support the San Antonio Scorpions. I'm sure they're ecstatic to have NASL soccer in their backyard that they can go out and support. But their petition is to join MLS. This is why the NASL and the MLS are not in direct competition, and why it doesn't help NASL to set themselves up this way. I just don't get this as a good way to go about it. Again, push your brand, push your product, it's fine. There's some things that are better left unsaid. And yes, unfortunately, because there's no promotion and relegation, and do not even start to tell me that if there was pro-rel, the NASL would happily accept their second division status and work with MLS so that their teams could go up, because that's not how soccer has worked in this country. There is no organically grown organization that unites all of these clubs. These clubs are all new. The MLS clubs are new in any way you look at it. 1996, you're new. It has developed to the point where, in order for there to be consistent, viable, long-lasting professional soccer in the United States, there had to be closed leagues with direct control. This is not an argument for single entity. This is simply an acknowledgement that as long as we're going to talk about this issue of the NASL trying to compete, let's put this in context. Those owners may or may not have the idea to compete with MLS. I don't know. I don't know when they joined NASL if they wanted to compete. I remember the split from the USL. I remember that whole thing. TOA, the Team Owners Association, before they even decided to go and trade on nostalgia by calling themselves the NASL, when they split from the USL. And I got the reasons why. There wasn't a whole lot of promotion in USL at the time, the USL 1 division. They wanted to be a little bit bigger and better. That's great. That's great. But to imagine that they're going to compete with MLS, I don't get how that helps them. I don't get how that helps them. Concentrate on what you got. What you do. If you do things better than MLS, then prove it. Show it. If you are of the opinion that the way NASL runs their season, split season, single table, in those seasons, winner gets a playoff spot. Second place, third place, fourth place teams potentially can make the playoffs, depending on who wins what and when. If you agree with this, if you like this idea, think this is more true to the spirit of soccer, that's fine. Go watch NASL. There's a lot of different ways to run a soccer league. There's no right way to run your playoff system or your single table system. Find that hilarious. Again, he does nothing wrong when he promotes the NASL as a quality league people should be paying attention to. Fine. Yes, absolutely. Maybe you bent over a little bit too much for the Cosmos. I don't know. Maybe. Letting them in for the second half of the season last year. Maybe. I don't know. They could tilt everything off kilter by spending more money. Eric Stover says they're not spending that much more money than anybody else. Okay. It's fine. The amount of growth within the NASL is astounding and encouraging from an American soccer fan perspective. I'm going to step back, just stand here and take a look at the entire scene. We've got MLS. They're growing. They're going to get to 24 teams, blah, blah, blah. Stadiums popping up all over the place. I look down a level and I see the NASL, which has basic standards for their ownership that will help those teams stay viable as long as they are operating in a responsible budget area. I see them building state. The San Antonio Scorpions have a soccer-specific stadium. The Carolina Railhawks have a soccer-specific stadium. The Atlanta Silverbacks doing well in a venue appropriate for what they are. This is all good. This is all quality growth. This is all good stuff to see. Because what we need to make sure of, and I'm sorry, I'm going to hit this again. I'll bang this drum until the end of my days. What we need to make sure of is that these teams don't go anywhere. Are we past that hump now where we can start talking about battles and league wars? Bill Peterson is angry because MLS wants to go into the same markets that NASL is in. If NASL was the same kind of product as MLS, then that wouldn't happen. There'd be no demand for it. MLS operates on a different level than the NASL. That's just a fact. That's not me claiming the NASL is not good enough. That's just a fact right now. Maybe they see a different way to build their league. That's fine. But again, and I'm not saying you have to work with them. I'm not saying that NASL has to work with MLS. Clearly, they passed on the opportunity to be what USL Pro is right now. So you don't have to work with them. But maybe not set yourselves up as anti-MLS. Because in my mind, there's not a whole lot that you can really crow about yet. It's all great growth. It is. It's all fantastic growth. But really, what makes the NASL so different that we should be giving our attention to it over MLS? Where's the TV contract? I'm just saying, look, you want to hate on MLS. I don't think that MLS is actively keeping the NASL down. I think MLS is going to do whatever they think is in their best interest to grow the sport that they helped reignite back in 1996. Is there a legitimate reason for MLS to avoid Minneapolis, San Antonio, Atlanta, Miami? Those are all top markets in this country. MLS would be stronger for having those markets. And if you really think that NASL is going to do stuff that's more in line with the rest of the world, if you really buy that notion, then just go watch the NASL team in those future MLS markets. If you're a Minnesota United fan and they don't go away when an MLS team comes to Minneapolis, go watch Minnesota United. No law against supporting the lower division side. Again, I don't understand why we have to have this as 1 and 1A. Whether or not we have promotion relegation. Shouldn't we have a second division that does well so that one day we can imagine promotion and relegation? For all of you pro-rel people out there, the more the NASL pushes against MLS, the more stink that they make, the more damage they do to themselves by failing to put themselves in the proper second division context, the further we are from pro-rel. Daniel on Twitter, NASL confirmed that the Atlanta Silverbacks are in negotiations with Freddie Adu. Hey, fine. Good move. That's a good move. That's a good move for Freddie. It's a good move for the Atlanta Silverbacks. Lots of pub for Atlanta. The biggest instability, this is from Steven on Twitter. The biggest instability of lower leagues are the constant poaching of their teams to MLS. That's nonsense. It's nonsense. The lower divisions have instability because their owners run out of money and the teams die. That's why there's instability. That's why there's been historic instability. We're going to jump all the way to 2009, 2010 and say, well, oh, look, the second division broke down because the Sounders went to MLS and the Timbers went to MLS and Montreal went to MLS. Yeah, those were strong teams in those leagues. I get it. I get it that it sucks for that league to lose those teams. But that league, that second division would have been in a much stronger place if they had managed themselves more properly up to that point. And I know maybe that's not the leadership now. Maybe that's not NASL's leadership now. That's not their fault. And lay that at the feet of USL. That's fine. That's fine. I just want there to be, I want there to be a network of teams across the country where the fans can go and watch the game, support their team. Don't have to worry about some kind of battle against the other league. Because again, the reality of it is the NASL is not in competition with MLS. They're just not. Because competition implies they're on some equal footing on some level. They're not. So why shouldn't the NASL concentrate on what they can control? You can't control MLS coming in and taking away a market, if you want to look at it that way. You can't control San Antonio fans starting a petition to get themselves into MLS because, the NASL is nice, but look at that. That's the top division. It's the top. You can hate MLS all you want, but be aware of the reality. All right. I got going. I'm done. iTunes ratings and reviews help us out a lot. You can find us on Twitter, Soccer Morning. Find me on Twitter, DavisJSN. Thank you very much to our guests, Jonathan Tannewell, Kyle McCarthy. Thanks to Eddie from Brooklyn, everybody else that called in. Talk to you on Monday. Bye.
The days on the boulevard are lended. We used to kick routines and the presence was fitting. It was I, the abstract, and me, the pop.